as a consequence of the pandemic, both personally and professionally, because really they go hand in hand. So as more people are coming in, I feel like there's more people coming. I thought we'd just do a bit of housekeeping before we get going with the questions that you've already submitted. You may have seen on our email earlier in the week that we were prompting people to send through their questions for our panelists. If you haven't, don't worry, you'll absolutely have a chance to share those questions with the panel later in the evening. But first and foremost, we want to answer the questions that were sent through on email. So we'll do that first. Let me just see. So yes, Zoom, let me talk you through it. I'm sure you've all done Zoom calls with your family and friends during lockdown, but just in case you haven't used all the functions, I'll just run through them quickly with you now. So as I said, you're on mute. That is absolutely the way that it should be. And this is just not personal, promise. It's just so we can actually hear our panelists and really, really understand what they're saying and not have any background noise interfering with what they're talking about. Secondly, as I said, if you would like to turn on your cameras, we'd absolutely love to see you all here. I'm just scanning through now. I can see some friendly faces and some people that I know, so that's lovely. So yes, if you would like to turn on your camera, please do so. And finally, at the bottom of your screen, if you hover your cursor over the screen, you'll see a little board come up at the bottom and you'll see a chat function. We will be using the chat function tonight, so it's worth kind of clicking on that now to get the pop-up bar next to the screen. It should appear automatically. I'm a bit of a tech novice, but that's kind of how it's happened for me. So if you have the chat bar, it would be amazing if you could just pop in your name, a quick hello, and actually maybe tell us where you're coming from tonight, where you're actually watching from. We'd love to have a broad spectrum of where you are in the country. So if you could just say hello in the chat function and let us know where you are, that'd be amazing. So I'll leave it.
Can I also just quickly check, Maxine, I should have said, just to let you know, we're going to record this tonight. We were asked for it to be recorded as well. So just if anyone's got any issues, kind of drop me a little message as well. But we're now on record because I just remembered to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely good point, Kirsty. Thank you for reminding me as well. We are recording this just so we can refer back to it. And also, if there are anything that you're kind of missing later on, and if there's any questions that you feel like you didn't get the answer to, we can refer back to this recording as well. And we can chat with you after that as well to kind of affirm what we were talking about. So yes, that's why we're recording it. Yes, so as I was saying, now that we've kind of got into terms with the chat function, I can see a lot of hellos coming through. We will be using the chat function at several points during the evening just to engage with each other and chat as well. If you would rather ask your questions when the time comes on video call with your voice, then we can absolutely do that. You can just pop that in the chat box when the time comes, and I will let you kind of speak. But yeah, so that's kind of what we'll be using. So I don't know, Kirsty, can you see?
Yeah, no, we've got a huge Scottish contingency tonight, but we also do have Avril down in London. We've got Carlisle and Fife. We've got lots of East Lothian as well. We've got North Berwick. We've got Dunbar as well. We've got then Aberfeldy, Paisley. We're down in Derby as well, back up in Aberdeen. Then we've got Stornoway as well. We've got a couple of people from Stornoway, which is really, really exciting. And then we do have somebody from Portobello, so welcome. That's where I am as well, the best place to be. And then we've got someone from Geneva as well, so that's fantastic. All the way down to the borders, all the way up, and someone then down in Surrey, so yeah, in Yorkshire as well, Selkirk. So a real broad range today.
Oh, amazing. I'm so glad that so many people could be here and be part of this tonight. And I think the broad spectrum of people as well, where you are, really kind of writes home what Hood is about. It's about being in your hood, wherever that may be in Scotland. So I'm glad that you're all here and you found yourselves with us. That's amazing. So thank you again for joining us. So in a moment, you've seen Kirsty, who's part of our panel. I will introduce you to everyone in a second, I promise. But another interactive part of this evening that we'll be doing are little polls, which we thought would be fun. So we're going to do our first one now, which should pop up automatically on your screen. There you go, it's come up on mine, so I hope it has for you as well. So this is just kind of for us to have an interactive element to this evening. As I say, it's quite hard when we're doing all the talking, but we want you to very much be a part of this. So this is kind of a fun way to do that. So the first question that we're going to ask you tonight, it's not a test, I promise, and your answers are anonymous, so don't worry about that either. But we thought this might be quite an interesting talking point to kick off with. So on top of their jobs, how much more housework and childcare are women doing in contrast to their male counterparts during lockdown? So 20%, 40%, 60%, or 80%. If you'd like to cast your vote on what you think that percentage might be, I'm assuming you're all doing it. We're actually going to start totting up the results in a second as well. We'll be able to see them live coming through. So Kirsty, have you got any responses?
Yeah, no, we have. We've got quite a few coming through. Yeah, so in the middle, we've got a few, but yes, I think there's maybe a clear winner at the moment, Maxine. Do you want me to say what it is?
You can, absolutely.
So we've got quite a lot on 60%, but the majority are on 80%.
Well, it kind of comes as no surprise, although it kind of should, shouldn't it? But you're absolutely right. Women have taken on, actually, I was speaking to Gill, one of our panelists earlier, but surplus 80% of the housework of childcare during lockdown in comparison to our male counterparts. And that is just, I think that speaks volumes, really. We're taking on the line to share the work, undoubtedly, and we're juggling our careers. For some, we're juggling career uncertainty, redundancy, or also just unemployment in general. So it's a lot to take on and place upon our heads, absolutely. But what tonight really is about, and why I think it's so important, and I think this is why so many of you are here, tonight is about you, and it's a time for you to unpack and address any kind of professional anxiety or uncertainty you might be experiencing. I've always thought a problem shared is a problem halved, so now you can quarter it with our panelists tonight, and really I couldn't think of four more deserving and really like at the top of their game women to help us do that. So without further ado, let's kind of go through our panel, and I'll introduce them, but they'll also tell you a little bit about themselves as well, so you can get more of an idea, and that might inform your questions for later down the line as well. You might have someone specific you'd like to answer them. So let's get going, shall we? Firstly, I'll introduce you to Gill Whitty-Collins. Gill is the author of the book Why Men Win at Work, and was previously the Senior Vice President at Procter & Gamble, where she led global brands including Pantene, Olay, and Always. Now she is a consultant and a coach. So Gill, I don't know if you want to take over.
Thank you, Maxine. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be here with you all tonight, and thank you so much to HOOD magazine for putting this on. It, as you said, Maxine, it's so important right now. This year has been extremely tough for everybody. It has been extra tough for women, with everything that women are taking on realistically, above and beyond their careers. And 1 in 4 women are saying they're considering downshifting or giving up on their careers. So we can't have that, not unless they want to anyway. So I'm really glad we're here talking about how we can, you know, give each other advice and help and support to avoid doing something that we really don't want to do. I'm going to be talking from my experience, obviously from having written Why Men Win at Work, and you know, all of the knowledge from that on gender equality, which is a huge passion of mine to drive and to not let us get dragged back to the 1950s by all of this, but also obviously from my experience at Procter & Gamble, and you know, from having my own career, but also managing a lot of women who had careers who worked for me as well. So that's what I'm hoping to bring. Thank you for having me.
No, thanks, Gill. That's amazing. And I agree. I think there's something to be said about if you absolutely want to be, you know, whatever your role is that you want to play, then that is fine. But I think it's just that stress of let's keep fighting, and let's get what we want, basically. So yeah, thank you for bringing that to tonight. Yeah, really invaluable. Our next panelist is Rachel Stewart. Rachel is the principal of TrapBrain Financial, and many of you might recognize her because she is HOOD's resident financial expert and columnist. So Rachel, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Maxine. So I guess tonight I'm really here just to share some of my experiences in my career and how that's all panned out. When it comes to career, I think I've pretty much been through everything, including redundancy in the last financial crisis. I've worked full-time, part-time, contracted. I've had 2 bouts of maternity leave and the traditional juggling of being the primary carer for my children, alongside wanting a career of my own. I'm the ambassador for the Ensuring Women's Futures project, which really aims to address the women's pension deficits, and I'm really passionate about helping women in their lives financially as well. So I'm really excited to talk to you all today and be here.
Amazing, Rachel. I agree. Women in finances, we need to take that head on. So yeah, it's great to have you as well joining our panel tonight. Next, we've got Catherine Muirden. Catherine Muirden is a people director who has spent over 30 years hiring and developing talented people. She has also held senior roles at Marks and Spencer's and Barclays. Catherine, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm a people director or an HR director. We have many names, but so often I'm the architect of changes that take place in the workplace. But it's not always been about managing crisis, although I seem to have landed in some corporate crises during my career. I've spent lots of time also developing women and spending time encouraging networking amongst women at work. And I've created leadership programs in order to give them a kind of leg up on the career ladder. So I'm excited about tonight. I'm the person that was interviewed for the original HOOD magazine piece on the changing world of work, and people asked a lot of questions, and I can see there's lots of questions that have come in tonight about how to really make a start when you're faced with change and you're required to take a different path. So that's one of my interests, and I coach young people particularly in how to advance their careers or really make a start in their careers as well.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, that's so important at the moment, as well as we'll talk about later. Young people are having a hard time at the moment as well because of the pandemic. So I think that will resonate with a lot of people here tonight as well, whether they are themselves experiencing that or maybe their children, nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters. Yes. So yeah, thank you, Catherine. And last but not least, we have KIrsty McWilliam, who you've already seen on screen. She's kind of my wing woman tonight. She's helped me with the tech, but also she is the founder of Coaching Direct, an executive coaching and coach training company. So KIrsty, over to you.
Yeah, no, firstly, lovely being your wing woman as well, Maxine. I am always happy to do that as well. But I'm really delighted to be here tonight to hopefully talk about my experience as well, because I've been, quite like Rachel, I've been employed as an accountant in KPMG and then PwC. I had 2 lots of maternity leave at PwC as well. So I want to share with you what I've learned from that, but also for the past 12 years, I have been coaching women through different transitions. So I hope to share parts of what I've learned from that as well. I also left my role in PwC. I was in the insolvency team and it was at the height of the recession. So to start 2 businesses with 2, at that point, very young children, it was maybe quite a radical move, seeing as insolvency was perhaps the only secure job back then. But, why did I do this? And it's something that I've really kind of asked myself quite a lot. And I think there was a real struggle, and I think I'm still seeing that struggle today with women not sure they can be a good mum and a good employee, and actually part-time maybe isn't working as well. So I hope I can kind of bring some of the solutions some of my clients have come up with and some of the insights that we've really picked up over the past 12 years and really help hopefully navigate the next 6 to 12 months for you guys as well.
Amazing. No, I'm sure your input will be invaluable tonight. Absolutely. Thank you, KIrsty. So yes, that's our amazing panel. These women are going to lead our discussion tonight, and I think without further ado, let's jump right into our questions. For anyone that's joined since, these are questions that were submitted on our email call out, I think 2 days ago. So that's what we're going to deal with first. However, as I said before, don't worry, you'll have a chance to ask your questions later in the evening. You'll be prompted to do so. So please don't worry, and we'll be keeping an eye on the chat function when that time comes. So let's get going then, I guess. Panel, this is your first question. Let me just get this on screen. Fabulous. Okay. Like so many, I was made redundant due to COVID, and my confidence is now at rock bottom. I got a reasonable redundancy package, and I want to spend some of it on getting my confidence back on track to face interviews and basically go through that process again. What would you recommend? I don't know, Gill, would you like to take on this question first?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry this has happened. I'm sorry your confidence is at rock bottom, and you're absolutely right. Job number 1 is very clear. Job number 1 is to work on your confidence, get that confidence back. I know it's not easy, but you absolutely can do it. Redundancy is painful. It's painful. All separations are painful. Even when we choose them, they're painful. But the first thing I want you to remember is redundancy has absolutely nothing to do with your value as a person or your value as an employee. It's just absolutely no reflection of that. So, you know, you have to really try to just let that attachment to, you know, self-esteem, to the company that you're working for, just let that go. How do you do it? How do you get your confidence back? Obviously, it's not easy, but I absolutely believe that every person, this is a bold statement, every person has what I call a confident core, right? And it's like, for me, it's like an apple. No matter how bruised or soft the apple is on the outside, go to its center, and in that center there is a strong and resilient and solid core, and we all have that, and you have that. Got to find it. How do you find it? You need to go inside, really spend some time thinking about, you know, what are my strengths? What are my unique talents? What are the things that I know I'm good at? And you know what, no matter what anyone else says, I know, even if they challenge me on this, I know that I'm actually good at this. Go there, find those, remind yourself of those. That is your confident core. And then from there, you can start to rebuild and think about, okay, if I use those strengths and I speak from those strengths and I look for whatever my future is going to be from those strengths, I'm going to be good and I'm going to be solid, because that is actually the unshakable core of strength and talent that I have. It will take some time, but you absolutely can do it. And I can promise you, you'll be more confident than you ever felt in that previous role.
No, thank you, Jill. I agree. I think it's a long process, isn't it, for some people, especially. You know, it's not going to happen overnight, but I think putting in that groundwork is integral. So yeah, thank you for that. Catherine, would you like to elaborate on that as well?
I mean, I agree with Jill's comments. I think there's also something about caring for yourself when you're at a stage where your confidence has been knocked. And some people say, you know, there's this self-care thing that some people think that's a bit of a cliche, but I don't. I think that looking after yourself I think about the acronym SHED: sleep, hydration, exercise, diet. All of those things help to build that core that Jill's talking about, and indulge yourself in something you actually enjoy doing when you're really feeling low. My family can always tell that I've got something on my mind when I'm out digging in the garden for, you know, the whole day until the sun goes down. That's where I take my kind of solace, and I think about things and mull over things because I enjoy it. Jill mentioned strengths, and I think that practically, if you're planning your CV and you're planning to work through interviews, think practically about the things that you're good at and ask other people. Don't, you know, we're great at hiding our lights under a bushel. I think it's really important to ask other people, either former work colleagues or family, about the things that you're practically good at. That boosts your confidence, but it's also something that you can weave into interviews. And if you haven't done an interview for a long time, just practice doing it. Just keep practicing with strangers, friends, ask your neighbor, whatever. You know, the best sports people just practice and practice and practice. And you've got to, you know, you've got to kind of build up a muscle sort of that's primed and ready for interview practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that well, it's never really occurred to me to practice interview skills like with someone. You know, you kind of do it maybe with a friend or whatever, if you know you're going to an interview and they'll be like, oh, so what are you going to say? But actually repeatedly doing that process, you're right, athletes do it to stay at the top of their game. Why not to stay at the top of your career game? Yeah. You know, really good point. Thank you for that, Catherine. If no one else has anything to add, I'll move on to the next question. Here we go. I gave up my full-time role to look after my family. Kids were young and my parents weren't in the best health. I'm now ready to do something for me, but I don't know where to start. Any advice? I'm sure this will resonate again with a lot of people as well who have gone through the same footsteps. So I don't know if maybe Rachel, do you want to take that one? I'm sure this will kind of spark something with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'll maybe tell you a little bit about my experience, having made that transition from, I guess, mum to then wanting to expand my own career again. So when I had children, I also assumed the role of primary carer. It fitted with what my husband and I were doing at the time. And in order to facilitate that, what I ended up having to do was take a step back from my own career, and ended up taking on some part-time junior roles and short-term contracts. And I never really actually felt very fulfilled with that, and I wanted more. So what I ended up doing in my second bout of mat leave, the straw that broke the camel's back, I needed to have a goal or something to aim for. So I used the time to just try and write down a little bit like what Catherine was just saying just there, making a list of all the things I actually liked about the job that I was doing prior to having kids, and what I thought I was good at in that job, and really trying to be truthful with myself. And then I kind of used that list to go online and do a bit of happy Googling to try and find out some, I guess, there's a lot of chat rooms and things out there, and there's actually quite a lot of information just about fields that were maybe similar. I should have said I was a lawyer for 15 years, and I was just looking for a way to amend my career around my kids and what else I could do with those skills. So I was looking for sort of aligned careers where I could use all the skills I'd built up and all my training that I'd had in my law career in a different channel that maybe fitted better. And then once I'd done that, I then kind of narrowed down some options and figured out what it was I actually maybe wanted to do, which was kind of leaning towards the financial planning side. I then ended up using the contacts that I built up in my law career to try and find someone who was willing to have me tagging along for a day. So because I thought, well, if I'm going to make the transition, I need to know exactly what it's going to be like on a day-to-day basis and really understand if it is something that I would be good at. And I had my suspicions on that, so I wanted to just make them into concrete. So I shadowed somebody for a day, and then I went around and asked my friends about if I did make this transition, and this was what I was thinking about doing. What did they think? Because they probably knew me better than I did, and just had a bit of a wine chat with them about what their thoughts were, and if they met me in my new sort of sphere as a financial planner, what would they think of me doing that, and how I would come across. And I find that really invaluable, because I don't know, I'm my biggest critic, and I'm sure that we all are, and it's really difficult to look at yourself and think, oh, actually, no, I think I'd be good at that, and I think I could do this. You actually need that boost to somebody else to say, actually, no, you're right. Your skills and everything you're saying, you can do it. And just like that, sort of having that with my friends, just keeping on going with the networking. I think it was Jill that maybe mentioned networking as well. Even during that transition, joining sort of Zoom calls and joining other chats, and there's lots of groups around. I'm sort of roughly Edinburgh based, and there's a whole load of groups around there full of really supportive people who've also been through that transition and are probably in the middle of it as well. And I find that really useful too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Rachel, in that. And it's actually something that Catherine touched upon in an article she wrote in HOOD. So some of you maybe read that too, but it's about getting that outside perspective from someone to actually be able to look inward, and you sometimes need to have it reflected in you. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. Catherine, actually, would you like to elaborate on this question as well then?
Yeah, just probably a sort of tip from the world of recruitment and resourcing is that there are one or two companies now, if you're in a profession and you've left the profession for quite a long time, a long time, not like maternity leave, to be the primary child carer. There are now companies that are starting to be more enlightened about returners programs, getting you back up to speed. And there are also some recruitment, I'm going to say niche recruitment agencies that will specialize in particularly women returners. A friend of mine in London some years ago set up an agency called She's Back, and it was specifically about women in the professions who had taken a big long 10-year or more gap and wanted to return to work, because it does take a lot of confidence building, so it's worthwhile just sort of exploring that as an option, a sort of practical option about if there are returners programs within your particular profession. And I don't think employers are that closed to people that have taken a big gap, but I would also consider and I know that Rachel's kind of talked about this, consider the practical skills that you have, get the view from somebody else, but also think about, you know, if you've taken a long gap and you've brought up the family, you're probably quite a good project manager, really. You're probably quite a good delegator. You're probably quite good at leadership skills, and you're probably very organized. So, you know, don't knock what you've not been doing at work, because you've actually learned an awful lot of skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something as well that I've been having conversations with people in my life who are in a position where they need to move on into something else, and they're worried about the things that hold them back. Maybe it's not having a degree, maybe it's not this, that. It should be focusing on the things you do have, and maybe they're not.
Yes, yeah.
Exactly.
I said to someone the other day, you know, if you were trying to set up one of your mates on a date with somebody else, you wouldn't start by saying, well, she's not a very good cook, or she can't. You know, you'd say, well, she's great, she's a bubbly person and she's got a great personality, wouldn't you? I mean, you don't start with the things that you can't do.
Exactly, absolutely. Never do that. Okay, fabulous. Well, I think that kind of rounds off that question. I don't know if anyone else wants to weigh in, but on with the next one. I'm a recent graduate and I've applied for almost 300 jobs, wow, since leaving university with no pickup. How do I make my application stand out from the crowd? Well, Catherine, I think this one's got your name all over it.
I am sorry. If there's one community that has suffered, you know, alongside women during COVID, it's young people. And today's research, there was, you know, I heard on the news this morning that the research shows that 1 in 5 young people who have been on furlough have lost their jobs. You know, those who've been on furlough have gone on to lose their jobs. And I think it is really, really tough in the graduate market at the moment. And when you think about young people, also, of course, hospitality, retail, leisure, these are the industries that have been hit, and they're dominated by young people too. There are, I suppose that if you're in a situation where you feel like you're in a big pool of graduates and everybody's fighting for the same roles, how can you make yourself stand out? That's the question that's been asked here. And sometimes I think it's about the personal approach. And I think sometimes generationally, there's a reticence to perhaps knock on doors, use a network, talk to people face to face, you know, bombarding employers with emails and CVs sometimes is just not enough. Sometimes you've got to knock on doors or use your network to find out about opportunities. I think also researching various, you know, there are skills shortages in the UK. There are skills shortages in construction in the UK. We don't have the same number of vocational training courses as, say, Germany has for its construction industry. But nevertheless, they exist, and it might be worthwhile thinking as a graduate and topping up your degree, not with another degree, but with some kind of vocational module that will help, because there are industries that are looking for people. There are growth, you know, there still are growth industries, whether in environmental jobs associated with the environment or ecology. There are jobs that are associated, of course, with the climate crisis, with ocean protection, with what we eat. So I think it's worth, you know, exploring further where the real gaps in the in industry are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we had this conversation before, Catherine, when we were talking about, you know, what jobs are secure, which ones are going to be the most kind of secure going forward. And although there's no crystal ball, you just need to look at what's going on in the world, don't you, as well, and see what's going on. And
that's right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, here we are all meeting through technology, so it's not as if we're going to be short of tech. We're probably going to be short of tech people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good point. Amazing. Right, I think that really covers that question. So I'll move on to the next one. I think a lot of people will resonate with this one too. I always hear, do a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. is that possible in today's climate? Now, before we go to the answers, we're going to do another poll. As I said before, it's anonymous, so please don't worry about giving your answer. You can be honest with us. But do you love what you do? Please just, if you could take a moment to answer that for us, and then we'll see what the poll says. I think it's really interesting what will come through. So, Kirsty, has anything come through your end yet?
So we talking about tech is probably what we need in the future. We're having a little technical glitch at the moment. So I'm going to pivot, because that's what we're all meant to do in this moment in time. And you've got a reaction button down at the bottom. So if you do a job that you love just now, I want you to get your reaction and put your thumbs up. So
Okay.
I'm going to use my accountancy skills to count you.
Yes.
Wow. For some reason, Catherine's got a different colour, but that's fine. I would say that is about half of us. Would you say that's about half?
Yeah, I think it looks off. Yeah.
That is not a bad split. Half and half.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I mean, that is super encouraging, isn't it? And I think obviously we'll maybe get into it in the question, but Kirsty, I don't know if you want to take it away actually. What does that look like in today's climate? Do you think it is possible to love what you do? I mean, some people do.
I was going to say, thankfully, some people do. And I think it's something that people put up with, actually. I think certainly a lot of the women that I work with, and actually men as well, I think this is broader than just women, they do a job because actually they think maybe they've been told they're good at it, or that's what they were told to do. I was an accountant for 15 years, because why would you stop being an accountant after you put all that effort in, and realising that you can change sometimes isn't within everyone's gift. So I think a lot of people put up with not loving a job, but I think absolutely you can love your job, and I think you can feel that you don't work as well. But can you love every part of your job? Probably not. So it's about working out, and I think quite a few people have mentioned strengths already, and I'm a massive advocate of strengths. Knowing what you're good at, knowing your strengths will really help you find a role that you love, because you might have to tweak your role as you go on, and certainly as you progress. I think it's silly not to tweak your role as you progress. There will be also things in your role just now that I think you might have loved before, or that other people say that you're really good at, but actually it might really zap your energy as well. So I think you've got to think about, what is it that I really love doing, and do I get energy from it? So always think about your strengths in line with your energy as well. So you will know that you're working in a real life strength, as we call them. Do you lose track of time? Is it the first thing you do off your to-do list? Do you get a buzz when you're doing it? Do you want to tell people about it? Do you want to know more about it? So there's a bit of a thirst for it as well. And that's when you start to really understand you and your strengths as well. And I think some people talked before about ask other people. I think it's really good, but sometimes people will say, someone would say to me, oh my gosh, Kirsty's brilliant at reporting or accountancy, and I performed it very well. That's how I got there. Actually, it drains my energy, and it's at the bottom of my to-do list now. I still have to do my accounts, but it's at the bottom of my to-do list. So actually some things that we think there may be more learned behaviours as well. So I think really work out what it is that you love. And there will be little parts in your role as well. So find them if you were one of the 50% that don't, and think, how can you dial it up? And maybe the parts in your role just now, maybe think how you can dial them down, and find other people, find a teammate that does love it. Sarah's on the call with me tonight. One of Sarah's top strengths is a writer. One of my weaknesses is a writer as well. So we work really well together. I was like, brilliant, you can write all the amazing stuff. So, find someone to complement it, because you will not probably love every part of your role, but I think you can definitely find a role that you love the majority of as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point as well, Kirsty, is about having conversations with people that you do work with and working out what they actually really like, because I think we always assume that the thing you don't like doing is the thing everyone else doesn't like doing. Whereas if you can find that kind of equilibrium of being like, well, you can take that because you enjoy that, and I'll take that off your plate because I like this. That's, a really good piece of advice. Catherine, again, I feel like this is something that we talked about when we were interviewing you for the magazine before. Is this something that you'd like to discuss as well? Can you do something that you love as a career?
Well, yes, you can, of course. Kirsty's absolutely right. I think the only thing I would add to this is, there's a difference between loving your job and, well, sometimes it's loving your job, but most often it's loving the people you work with. In my experience. And the only time that I've got out of bed in the morning and thought, oh no, I've got to go to work, I can't bear it, was when I had an awful boss many years ago, many years ago, not known to any of us. And I realized that it's not so much the content of sometimes it's the content of the work. Every workplace has its, every work activity has its sort of high or low. Mm-hmm. It's very often about, whether you stay in the job or not is about the person you're going to work for. And the reason you leave often is because of the person you work for as well. Mm-hmm. So choose your boss wisely, I think I would say would be my piece of advice about loving your job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's absolutely the case, and I'm sure a lot of people as well will be able to draw from experience on that too, either in the positive or the negative. I do think the people that you're around day to day or via Zoom with really affect that. So yeah, absolutely, that's a good pivot on that too. Okay, so on to the next question. We'll keep things moving. I work in a fast-paced, predominantly male environment, and while I'm committed to my career, I want to start a family soon as well. Will I be able to participate in my children's lives the way I'd like to, go to parents' night, see their school plays, be there to listen about their day? Is this possible, or am I just kidding myself and wanting it all? Rachel, do you want to take this on? I know this is something, again, being a mother yourself as well, I'm sure it's something that you've toyed with over the years too. So
yeah, this question sounds like me a few years ago, and exactly the position that I was in. So during my law career, when I was considering having a family, I was just exactly the same. I wanted the family, I wanted the career, I wanted to be there for my boys, but I'd worked really hard to get to where I was. I didn't want to give that up, and it was just a really difficult position to be in. And pre-children, I used to work really long hours because I could. I had no other commitments. I just threw myself into my work, trying to climb the career ladder and really make use of all those years of studying that I'd done to get there. And then when I took on the role of carer for my children that I mentioned for the last question, I just found at that point that there was no flexibility in my working hours for that particular business I was working for, and the ability to work from home was not there because there was a big culture of presenteeism and bums on seats, and if I wasn't there, then I was assumed to not be working. It was just really not a flexible environment. And on the flip side, because I was commuting and my kids' nursery was out in East Lothian, my day, if I was going to be commuting into Edinburgh, it just was never going to work around the long hours that I was working previously and the expectations of that particular business. So ultimately, I had not really any other choice, and ended up leaving. And I'd mentioned before that I did take on sort of more junior roles because I found that what I could do with those is work part-time and still cover the work that was needed because I had more years experience, if that makes sense. But I guess what I found, it worked for a while, but then I started to get really kind of resentful and just felt really unfulfilled because I'd obviously studied for so long and so hard, and I'd been working really hard to get to where I was pre-kids, and I just wanted to get myself back on some kind of track. So I guess where I'm going with this is that what I found was that it did spur me on to sort of take that step back, and I'd mentioned in the previous question about how I just used my maternity leave to work out, well, what is it I actually want? What am I trying to get from my career? And maybe what changes can I make to make this work for me? And for my particular position, I found that actually having my own business was a way that I was going to be able to work with kids and I could use my skills. And I found by my shadowing opportunity that there was a route into the industry that I could work to and create my own business and then work my hours around the boys. So I guess, although having kids, it changes everything in your life, not just your career, but it doesn't have to change it for the worse. You just need to make adaptations and really look at what you're actually trying to achieve and how best you can sort of sidestep to get there. And there are definitely ways of doing that. And particularly in this current climate where we've all been forced into a sort of online culture, I think things are getting a bit more flexible than they were certainly when I had children several years ago. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's another really valid point, is the fact that this has almost been like a test run for future ways of working, hasn't it? It's been forced upon us, and a lot of people have had to embrace it regardless of whether they wanted to or not. And yeah, I think it's kind of opened our eyes to the possibilities. So hopefully that will be something positive for women who are in this position. Absolutely. And I wish it was there for you then, Rachel. Gill, I don't know if this is another one you'd like to weigh in on. Again, it must be something that you kind of talk about in the book. So if that's something that you'd like to discuss, then absolutely, we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, a lot of people will recognise Rachel's story, and you know, but thankfully, she found her way through. So that's the good news. Listen, the bad news on this. Let me start with the bad news. I interviewed a lot of what I call super 7% women for my book. These, you know, women who made it to very, 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 very senior levels, and not a single one of them, without exception, not a single one of them was carrying the burden, the responsibility of the children, of the childcare, of the home care, on top of building this incredible career. They'd either decided not to have children, or they had a non-emasculated partner who was happy to deprioritize their own career and take on that responsibility, or they had the hell out of help. They were, you know, absolutely up to their ears in helping hands. Not a single one of them was doing it all. The reality is you can't do it all. You cannot do all of those things and be the perfect mom and, you know, do everything that you need to do for your career. So I think we all just need to accept that you can't. But I do believe that what you can do is the important things. And I think it's really, really key that you spend the time to identify what are those important things to you. You know, that this question talks about being present, being there for the children at the important moments. And I think, by the way, I got this advice many years ago from a very senior woman. Very important actually to discuss that with the kids as well when they're old enough. You know, what are the important moments for them? They're not necessarily the moments that you think are the important moments. We kind of maybe assume it's important to be there for sports day. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually more important to be there for something else. Identify what those really important moments are for you and your child or your children or your family, and delegate the rest. Delegate the rest. And delegate it either if you're one of the lucky ones you've got the partner who'll take it, fantastic, good for you. I know not many have found those unicorns, or hire help. But you know, the big thing to remember is delegate. Don't try to do it all. There are only 24 hours in a day. It doesn't fit, and something will give. You might think that you're managing it for a while, but actually it just doesn't fit, and something is going to give, and it may be your sleep. It'll probably ultimately be your career to some extent, because don't forget, career is not just about doing the work. It's also about doing all of that visibility, driving and networking and all of that stuff as well. That takes time. So don't try to do it all. Work out what's important and delegate the rest one way or another would be my advice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as you say, your support system might look different from your friends, whatever, but whatever works for you and whatever you can actually kind of commandeer. Absolutely. I think that's important. Yeah, thank you for that, Gill. I don't know, Kirsty, do you want to weigh in on this as well? I don't know if you'd have some
yeah, do you know, one of the things that I think interested me when you said that question is actually working in that predominantly male environment as well, and I think that really piqued my interest as well, you know, because we talk a lot to our clients about, have you got a role model? You know, is there someone else in the organization that's a role model? And if there isn't a role model, there comes this time that someone has to be the role model, and perhaps the person has to then step up and be the role model. You know, we have to start this change, and sometimes the change actually has to start with you as well, you know. And if it is you that's going to have to be this role model, because people will be watching you in the organization, they'll be watching how the organization are treating you as well. So, you know, you want that future to come behind you. It'll be quite important as well. So maybe get some support out with for that as well. But also I would probably put it back on the individual. You know, I think as a coach, that's what we try and do anyway, and go, well, come up with your own solution. And I think we have to be quite creative about this. You know, you will know your role better than anybody knows your role. So actually, if you're wanting flexibility, if you're wanting your role to change, then actually, what is your idea for this as well? And I always encourage people to really think wider. You know, we have one FS client, she works 9 till 2. Her important parts, you know, picking up on Jill's part, you know, for her the important part is picking up from school at 3 o'clock and getting the dinner. That's her important part. So she logs back on and does what effectively is a split shift. Nobody in our FS client had done that before, but she put it to them and it works, you know, and we need more people kind of trailblazing it as well. So I think we have to be creative, and we have to come up with it. But I think, you know, building on what people have said, is we actually can't do this alone. You know, this isn't a kind of sole woman out there kind of, you know, running with the children, running behind her. You know, actually, you will need support and you'll need help to do this. And normally we're not very good at asking for help. So actually, how do we ask for help, and how do we let other people in? Because even sometimes when we ask for help, we're maybe not as gracious as we can be when we get the help. And I kind of sometimes describe it as it's a little bit like we become the CEO of our own house. So we will delegate, but it has to be done our way. You know, or we will kind of go, right, okay, I'm bringing other people in, but this is the schedule. You know, I've worked with some women that are, you know, VPs, really senior, and they'll get up at 4 in the morning to get their children's nursery snacks and nursery clothes out, and their husband's a stay-at-home dad. And I'm kind of going, my gosh, like, what is going on here? So there really is something about challenging yourself and going, well, actually, I can't have it all if I want to do it all as well. So, you know, we have to maybe start to ask for help, but maybe try not to be the CEO at home as we do that as well. But I think it is possible. You know, I think things are changing massively. You know, the FS client I'm talking about, you know, 35,000 of them worked at home more productively than they have done before. So there's fantastic opportunities coming up for both men and women. We're hearing a lot of men wanting much more flexible working, and actually a lot of men saying for the first time they're really feeling present in their kids' lives as well. So there are opportunities here for us to really start to you know, pick up the important parts and have them as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're spot on there, Kirsty, as well. And you know, what's that saying? Is it takes a village? I think that applies to that question. It sums it up. I think you can't do it, or you shouldn't have to do it on your own either. And I liked your point about being not being the CEO in your own house. I feel like that's something my husband would definitely understand, that I ask him to do something and then it's you know, as a favor, he does it perfectly fine, but not the way I'd like it. So I need to just let go of that. But yeah, I think that will kind of strike a chord. I think does with
it's
me.
When someone it's when someone says to my husband, "Are you babysitting the kids tonight?" I'm like, well, of course he's not, because they're his. They kind of belong to him as well.
Right, on to the next question. I'm just looking at the clock. I mean, it's flying by, so please stay with us as well if you can. But I think it's good to kind of give all these questions that have been submitted the answers they deserve. So we'll keep going. My career has been more of a series of jobs. I've never really found my niche, and now I'm in my 40s, my kids are at secondary school, and I finally feel like I've got time to consider what might be right for me. Good. My teenage son has recently taken a Moresby test, and I wondered if I should do the same. Now, before we answer this question, I don't know if anyone in our chat has done Moresby test before. I hadn't, but when I Googled it, well, I didn't know I had. It's basically a career aptitude test. So I did a bit of Googling today, and I found one on the government's careers website. So I decided to do one to see what would come up. For those of you, obviously I'm editor at HOOD, so my background is journalism, with definitely a focus on fashion. That's my history. But when I put in my skills and my experience and all that kind of factors into the test, it said that I should either be an RSPCA inspector or a cake decorator. So I don't know how spot on it is, but you know, you never know. I might want to diversify one day. But if you have done a career aptitude test, we thought it might be fun to have you type in the chat what your job is currently, and also what the job you were put in a career aptitude test said you should actually have. So if you have done that before, please put them in the comments. I know a lot of people maybe did that at school or something. So if it came up, then yeah, it might be a fun way to kind of spark that conversation. But going back to the question, Catherine, is this something you might want to tackle?
I think I mentioned the Moresby test in that article, didn't I? And everybody's talking about it. Well, look, first of all, I think the start of this question was about I've never really found my niche. the questioner said something like that. The book I'm reading at the moment, I've just picked this one up. It's called Range, and it's entitled, subtitled, How Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. So if somebody hasn't found their niche, I would say, well, don't worry about that. If you've done lots of different things, it's probably just only added to your strengths. So perhaps I'll do a book review for Hood magazine on this one once I've finished it. But I think finding out a little bit more and exploring can be quite eye-opening. I mentioned a few websites and things in my article, my interview, and Morrisby was one of them, and it is fairly detailed, and you do have to pay for it. Career assistance kind of site. Now, I thought it was hilarious that you were advised by the government that you should become a cake decorator or an RSPCA inspector. Was that right? Yeah. Okay. I think that one of the points of all of these is that it's not so much about trying to. It's not a horoscope. It's not some kind of tarot reading about you, but what can be useful about career sites or something like Skills Scotland or whatever, is that it opens up possibilities that you may not have thought of before. Very often you see children who follow a career path because their parents have followed a career path. When my son, who's 16, did the Morrisby test, what it threw up for him was a whole range of different jobs that were kind of basically kind of science-based, engineering-based, but many of them I'd never heard of before. And the whole point is that being 16 or 17 and looking into the world of work, well, it's likely that the job you'll end up doing when you're 26 hasn't been invented yet. The opportunity in any of these careers sort of test sites is to actually expand your mind and think about possibilities. You might not want to be a cake decorator, but something has obviously triggered that. Is it because you're creative, or is it because you've got a strength that you haven't really considered before? Don't take them too seriously, but take the opportunity to expand your thinking about where opportunities might be. And if you're this person, I don't know who's asked this question, and you've never found your niche, but you've done several things, there'll be something you'll have enjoyed. So there'll have been a range of things you've enjoyed in the various jobs that you've done. So I would encourage you to certainly do as much research as possible into some of the emerging roles in the workplace at the moment.
Absolutely. I'm just going to screen over. I wonder if someone's got their sound on. It keeps doing interference on my end. I'm not sure about everyone else's, but apologies if you're hearing that too. Okay, so yeah, I think that's kind of covered that question. I think it's, as you say, kind of take it with a pinch of salt in a way, but it might help you identify things in yourself that you didn't really know that might spark those kind of careers. So yeah, definitely it might be worth looking into. On to the next question. I've been working in financial services for 3 years. I've been looking for female role models in my work, but I'm struggling to see myself in any of my colleagues. They work 15-hour days, appear to have no life outside of the workplace, and most have either decided not to have children or there simply hasn't been time for them. This all fills me with dread. Am I in the wrong industry? Quite specific, this one, but I think this is something that maybe Gill might be able to advise on.
Yeah, I mean, you're not necessarily in the wrong industry. You may, though, be in the wrong culture. I think within in the wrong, if you love the industry, if you actually love the work, don't throw that away if it's just that you're in the wrong culture. And my view is that if you are in a culture, if you do find yourself in a culture where you can't be the way you are, live the way you live, work the way you want to work, and that works in culture, and that you're valued and leveraged in that culture, don't waste too much time trying to change that culture. Identify that and take your talent and your brilliance somewhere else, but it can work for you. And remember, the other thing I would say, remember, Kirsty talked about it earlier, but sometimes you're the role model. Sometimes if you can't find a role model, it's because it needs to be you, because no one did it before. And that, you know, that can be amazing. I mean, my own little story is, in my very small way, I didn't realize it at the time, but when I joined P&G, I was a graduate. I was 22 years old. I'd had my son when I was at university, so he was 2 years old when I left university and started work. And as you can imagine, there were not many graduates who just started work there who had 2-year-old children. So I just got on with it. You know, I had no choice. I had to just get on with it and make it work. But what I realized years later was that I had been a role model actually for a lot of the other women who they said they saw me, and it made them realize, oh, you can do this. You know, we can actually do this and be successful. And by the way, be successful without working 15 hours a day. I absolutely did not do that. I couldn't do that. I had to drop him off at nursery, got into work for 9 if I was lucky, and had to leave at 5:45 to pick him up, and that was it. So in my small way, I was the role model. So don't be disheartened if you don't see a role model doing things the way you want to do them. You should still do things the way you want to do them, and maybe you'll just turn out to be the role model for somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said is clear as well. It depends on the workplace too, and if that is like the mentality of working 15-hour days, and that's maybe not the place to be, then I don't know. But yeah, there's so many factors, as you say. So it's good to kind of have fleshed that out. But also, yeah, maybe you are the role model that you didn't know that you were, and you should maybe look inward. So yeah, that's really good points. Kirsty, is this something that you've also heard as well? I
think there's a lot of the time, you know, do I fit? You know, am I fitting here? You know, that's not the kind of life I see for myself. I think it's bang on what Gill says, you know, it's probably more about the culture, but, you know, I would probably want to ask a couple of questions around this, because I've not heard much about if she likes the role, you know, because I would hate to see someone who loved the job they did and really liked the role leave because they can't see a future, you know, and you know, building on what Gill says, you know, you might need to create that future as well, you know, and if it doesn't fit you now, can you mold it? But there definitely has to be time scales on this, you know, let's not bang our head against a wall that's, you know, never going to actually work, you know, so actually do your best, try and see where it goes, and then it might well be that you're not going to move that culture. But I think I'd always want to, especially if it's a job I love, know that when I'm leaving, I've done everything I could to stay there as well. And I think as long as, I think it was Catherine that said it right at the beginning, as long as you've got a leader within that really inspires you, then I think actually we can manage to affect change as well. But yeah, if you love the role, I would definitely want you to find a way before kind of jumping ship on that one, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's it. If you're passionate about it and you want to make it work, then there might be ways that you didn't really think of beforehand. You know, if you're just going through the motions, maybe it's time to take a step back and look at it from an outside perspective. So absolutely. Again, I'm conscious of the time. I know it's 8 o'clock, but I hope you can all kind of stay with us. We've got one more question that was submitted prior to the live kind of event. So we will come on to your questions in just a short while, but I think it'd be great to answer this question for the person who is on the call that submitted it. So I'll fire away. I am a creative person and I have made a modest income from my art over the years. Good, amazing that you've done that. But I'm now starting to panic that with maybe around 15 years left in the workplace, I haven't considered my future with only a tiny pension put by. Can I continue to do the work that I love, but safeguard my retirement? Now, this is something that I'm incredibly interested in as well, having been a freelancer for the past few years and not really maybe taking the safeguarding steps that I should have. So Rachel, I know this is something that we've spoken about before because you know my anxiety on the matter. I don't know if it's something that you could share with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's quite a few things going on in this question, and it is a common one I get, unsurprisingly. But I guess where I'll start is that the concept of retirement is changing, and it has changed over the years. So, for example, in the 70s, there was a concept of retirement age, you know, 60 or 65, and you'd sail off into sunset and enjoy your golden years. But these days, with I guess what's dubbed as a gig economy, lots of short-term flexible working, and what I'm finding is that there's much more fluid thought going on about retirement planning, and that you know, people are retiring, but then continuing on to take short-term jobs and maybe pick up things that they wanted to do during the working career, but never really had the opportunity to do. So it really is more of a sort of fluid concept, I guess. So when you're saying you've only got 15 years left in the workplace, it's maybe, you know, releasing your thinking a little bit as to what exactly is it you want in retirement, and how might that look for you. So when it comes to retirement, you know, I think you hit the nail on the head. It is really about careful planning, and while things like auto enrollment, which I'm sure you've all heard of, those things have been great, but what it has done is maybe lead a lot of people to feel like there's a safety net there, which there isn't necessarily. You really have to think about your own personal situation and what your own goals are in retirement, and really think about your retirement planning very, very carefully. So with clients, where I always start is the end goal. So what age are you looking to retire? What does retirement look like for you? And that's where the sort of concept of gig economy comes in. And then also very much what income might you need in retirement. So what you've got to remember is that these days, with all the magical medicine and things we've got going on, and health-wise, we're all much healthier than we were in past generations. So our retirements could last as long as our working careers in theory. So we really need to make sure that we understand what income it is we need in retirement, and make sure that that is going to last us, and what we have saved is available is actually going to last us for our projected lifetime. So I guess where I'm going with this is that there are ways to help determine that, and I don't know, Maxine, I don't know if we can maybe send out some information after this to people who subscribe. So there's a website I'd recommend having a look at on that. And in a similar vein, if you do a bit of Googling, you can actually go on the government website and have a look at your own projected state pension. And that's a really useful starting point as well. So a state pension at the moment is sitting around about £9,000 a year, not to be sniffed at all, and it's definitely worth finding out how much your entitlement is, because it will depend on how much national insurance contributions and how many years worth of national insurance contributions you've made and will make at the point you come to be able to claim your state pension. So that said, there's not really a way to safeguard your retirement. I mean, unfortunately, we can't sort of create saving pots for you, but I guess what you need to remember is that think of it a bit like a bank. So if there was a high street bank that suddenly announced that they'd opened an account where you could put in £80 and they were going to shove in an extra 20 quid on top of that for free, oh my God, social distancing would be out the window. There'd be people hammering on the door to get in there to open up one of these accounts. And I think what people forget commonly, I find, is that is what a pension does. And what happens is that you'll get that tax relief, you'll get the investment returns on that tax relief as well over the years. So it really, really is an absolutely invaluable tool to help you save for your retirement, and you should be using it to its full, and you should be getting on top of it. So I guess, you know, some questions to maybe think about in your own situation on this is, do you have pensions from previous employers? What charges you're being, what charges are on those policies? You know, how they're performing, or who's managing them, or what it is they're actually doing for you. Are you receiving communications from all of your pension providers? I find so many clients who have trails of pensions from previous employers, and they don't actually know where they are, who they're with. It takes weeks and weeks and months to actually build up a picture of what their actual pot is. And really, really, you know, essential to get on top of that, not just that, you know, as and when you're planning to retire, but in the years and years before that, so you can really start getting to grips with where you are and what you need to fill, the gap you need to fill. And then I guess, like I touched on at the beginning, is what is your, I call it your pension magic number. So have a think about what income you're going to need in a standard year in your retirement. And that is a really difficult question to answer. But like I said, there are resources that I can help you with. And having the answers to those questions will allow you to build up a picture of your retirement. So you can't predict the future, but you can plan for it. And I do offer free consultations. I'll just throw that in there. So if you do have a pension query specifically, or if you want to talk anything about pensions or any sort of financial planning with me, then do just get in touch. I'm happy to talk you through it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great. Thank you for the opportunity. Oh, we've got some noise. Yes, thank you, Rachel, as well. I'll if everyone's happy on the call, I'll send around an email follow up after, maybe tomorrow or something, with your contact details on, and potentially the other panelists as well, if they would like that too. So anyone who's on this call, if there's anything specific that you'd like me to include in that follow up email, whether it's names of books or anything like that, websites that might be helpful, the link to the Moresby test, whatever, let me know in the chat, and I'll be sure to include that in our follow-up email tomorrow. So yes, thank you, Rachel. That's great. Right, so that comes to an end of all the pre-planned questions that we had from our previous email. I don't know about everyone on this call, but that's definitely been eye-opening for me. It seems that what we've uncovered is women place, particularly women, I know men do as well, but women seem to place an enormous amount of pressure upon themselves, and that our problems are really complex and multifaceted and really specific to our needs as well. But some of the most predominant things that I've taken away is that we tend to have odds with ourselves about fulfilling roles that we feel like need to be filled and need to be carried out in a certain way. And I saw someone comment, we'll come to that question. I thought it was great. I think it was Holly that made it, about being perfectionists. I think that's a thing that a lot of women subscribe to, is being perfectionists. So that seems to be apparent from today. And also there's also an abundance of self-doubt, which is very sad, but it's to me not surprising. I feel like women are very much the first people to kind of berate themselves and belittle their skills, you know, and when we've talked about that already, about even going to friends and saying, what do you see in me, what kind of am I conveying to you? I think there's still a need of self-doubt to be addressed there. And this is something that, you know, while they do absolutely have this, it doesn't seem to affect men in general so acutely as it does women. I don't know if the panel have anything that they'd like to weigh in on this. I don't know, Gill, again, you wrote the book on this. I don't know if you want to talk about that as well.
Yeah, it's obviously a massive question. There's a whole book on it, but it's absolutely true. But for tons and tons of reasons, many of which start in childhood, men are generally more confident. They are generally more confident. They generally have less of a need for perfectionism. I think one of the things men do better than women generally is they know that perfect doesn't exist. They learn that very early on. They learn that perfect doesn't exist. And by the way, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're not perfect. It doesn't matter if you fail. It doesn't matter if you get told off at school. It's really not the end of the world, and people are still going to like you, and people are still going to value you. And obviously these are generalizations, but it's absolutely proven that we see that a lot more in men. And I think if one of the things I could wish for women, it would be that we had more of the confidence that men do, because people value confidence enormously. They value it more in many ways than they value competence. Sometimes an extremely competent woman is very quietly not being listened to and not being leveraged, and because she doesn't have that confidence, and she's often being held back by that, what I call perfectionist syndrome. Someone's asked about perfectionism. I prefer to call it perfectionist syndrome, because I think some of us still think perfectionism is kind of a slightly positive word. It's still quite a good thing to be a perfectionist, and it isn't, because it's not possible. And if we wait to be perfect before we do anything, or before we're confident, we're going to wait a very, very long time, because it doesn't exist. So lots to learn. Actually on this, I very rarely say this, but on this I think there are some things to learn from men, and I'd love to see more women going out there and hitting the world full in the face with their amazing competence.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, oh, sorry, Kirsty, on you go.
No, I was just going to say, just building on that, you know, another syndrome we've got is imposter syndrome, isn't it? You know, that we've not spoke specifically about that today, and actually the research is really interesting, because Now men and women are as prevalent to it. So again, when it all came about, it was definitely a woman phenomenon, and now it's actually, but the difference between the two is actually for women, it will stop them doing something, when actually for men, they'll just keep doing it. They'll have it, and they'll have all these, oh my gosh, I'm going to be found out, oh my gosh, you know, someone's going to unearth me, all the rest of it, but they will generally still take action forward. It might not be as enjoyable, but they will move forward, whereas women generally will then retreat if your imposter syndrome comes in as well. So, you know, you just need to do it, you know, you just need to use that, you know, and sometimes you just have to take the action and you will be confident, you know, it is that, just do something.
Yeah, no, you're right as well, Kirsty. I mean, we were on a panel before about imposter syndrome, and I think that's something that we should almost do another virtual event so more people can come to that, because again, it was something that so many women were affected by, but no one really talked about when we were actually having this discussion. I think it, as you say, it's come more to light since then. But yeah, so that's great. So yes, that's amazing. Now's the time to ask your questions. I know some of you have had to head off. Elizabeth, don't worry. Understand we've run over, but thank you for those of you who are still here. If you do have any questions, please put them in the chat function now. We'd love to start answering them for you. I did see one, again, we might have touched on it, about being the perfectionist, but I'll read it out. This was from Holly. All very successful women on the panel, aren't they just? Something I think comes with being a high achiever is perfectionism. Do you guys manage your perfectionism in yourself? As Gill said, maybe we need to stop looking at perfectionism as being a, I don't know, like a positive. I've always called myself a perfectionist, but also to my detriment, I'm a perfectionist. So I don't know if that's something anyone wants to discuss.
I was taken by the, I think it was Kirsty was talking earlier about trying to be the CEO of your own home. I love that. And, you know, I've kind of given up trying to live in a perfect home. My cat's just come and joined us here on the silk cushion. She always chooses the best cushion to sit on. So I think it's absolutely spot on. And sometimes you've got to be able to delegate some of the perfectionism to other people. I've heard that sort of loud and clear as well. I couldn't have achieved what I've achieved if I hadn't had a husband who's an outstanding cook, and who I would never, you know, he would never delegate to me some of the things he does in the kitchen. And I've also had lots of support from other people over the years as well. So I completely get the thing about trying to be perfect and trying to do it all. It's not possible. Jill's absolutely right. And if there's anything, I suppose, that in this kind of COVID-ridden environment we live in, we could do for one another, it's probably to give somebody else a job. And if you can afford to pay somebody else to do something for you, a service of some kind that's going to take it off your jobs list, because otherwise it just weighs, psychologically, for some reason it weighs heavily in one's mind that one's not doing something perfectly, or you feel a bit guilty about not doing something. You know, delegate the task out. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's so true. You know, there's power in numbers and there's power in support. So yeah, delegate. Absolutely. Does anyone else want to comment on perfectionism and how that's affected them?
No, I would just say actually my motto is good enough. You know, I've seen the other side of perfectionism and how it doesn't work. So honestly, good is good enough. Amazing.
Yeah. Great.
I just try and have a bit of mind over matter. I mean, I suffer from imposter syndrome and perfectionism and everything, but it's just about training your mind a little bit to try and, when you feel these feelings coming in, just take a step back and just take a breath and take 5 minutes away and come back again to whatever it was you were doing. I just, you know, just mind over matter sometimes, and it does take a bit of getting used to and a bit of practice.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it does. Again, it's something you need to learn in yourself, isn't it? And kind of keep learning that and practicing that. I've had a question sent to me privately, so I won't say the name of the person, but it basically says that they're now unemployed. I'm not sure what the circumstances are around that, but they're unemployed and they're worried about applying for jobs without having the same qualifications that people seem to have now. I don't have a degree and I've been at the same company for a long time. So it seems that they're feeling very much, you know, kind of scared about going into the unknown, and kind of, I guess, again, the self-doubts creeping in, maybe not having the degrees. I mean, I've seen it before as well on job advertisements, especially when I was starting my career. They were asking for assistants with 5 years experience and a degree under their belt, and it's, you know, how can an assistant level person have all that? So I really empathize with you. I don't know if someone has some words of advice for this person.
I would say that job adverts are a guide. Don't get hung up on the things that you haven't done. We're very good at that. You know, you look at a list of 20 things, it's a cliche, isn't it? And you find one thing you've not done, so therefore you're not suitable for the job. So don't be put off by that. Experience and the way that you present yourself in your CV is more important, I think, than rigorously sticking to what the job requirements are. You know, within reason. If they're looking for an astrophysicist and you're a cake decorator, it's not going to work. But you know, I think that anything that's in the job description tends to be a guideline. It's an idea of what they're looking for, and having maturity and lots of work experience is very positive in itself.
And to build on that, don't forget the data, right? Don't forget that famous data that men think that they're perfect for a job when they have 60% of what the job description says, and women only sometimes consider applying if they can tick 100% of the boxes. So that means men are getting jobs they're 60% qualified for, and you're missing out on jobs that you're 95% qualified for but you didn't apply for. So we have to always keep that in mind. It comes back to that confidence thing and knowing nobody has everything. Use what you got.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm getting some messages privately sent as well, so I'm just going to take a second to read these. But I like this comment here about taking distance from your perfectionism as well to remain sane. I think we all need a bit of a break from ourselves sometimes. What would you suggest, you know, if you kind of need to take a step back and look at yourself analytically? Does anyone have advice on how to do that and how to kind of get perspective on what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we do as well, depending on what, you know, if that perfectionism is coming from a negative inner voice, you know, if it's that kind of, you know, yipping away at you as well, it's about catching that. You know, first of all, you know, well done when you catch it. And then to stop it, you know, just come up with three positive things about you, you know, and actually even when you go away tonight, write down the 3 positive things that there are uniquely about you. What is it that makes you unique? It has to be something quite strong, because you want to be able to say them to you like a mantra. And that gets you back on track, you know. So it's about coming up with 3 things that you can really celebrate about yourself and use them in those moments when you can feel that kind of trigger, whether it's a negative voice, whether it's perfectionism, but you want to stop it from spiraling. So first of all, recognize it, but have we call it a bank of 3 or the power of 3, just to get you back up and running.
Amazing. Yeah, agree. I've had another private question. Again, I'll put this out to the group. If you don't want to put it on the overall chat, you can filter down. If you click on the name of the person, it should currently say everyone. If that's your default setting, you can put it to my name, Maxine Eggenberger. You can't miss it. And you can send that to me and I'll ask the panel anonymously for you. So I will do that now. I've had one through. I recently took voluntary redundancy and have been out of work for a couple of months now. I'm finding it tough out there. Of course you are. It is tough. You're not alone in that. And as I can't get a job that I'm qualified to do, I can't. Sorry, I'm reading it as I go. I should have prepped this earlier. I can't get a job doing admin, but don't have the qualifications or experience to do something more senior. What should I do? Again, I think this is a catch-22 at the moment when the jobs are so in demand and so many people are going for them. People that are really qualified for them aren't getting them. So then there's a conflict of not wanting to apply for a lesser job than what you're worth. But you know, what's the option if you're not getting the jobs, not through any fault of your own, but because there's so much competition, it's so difficult.
Do you want me to take that one? I'm conscious that we're there may be some of these questions that are so specific to the individual's circumstances that it might be better to take them offline and perhaps, you know, for us to answer via email or something, if we can do that, because I don't want to shortchange someone who's in a position that's so kind of desperate. I kind of sort of recognise that the job market is so difficult. I think sometimes there is an aspect of reskilling or looking for help from, whether it's job coaches, and there are, you know, government job coaches, or whether it's advice from sort of local education outlets, whether it's a college course or something like that, to add the additional sort of skilling. And that might be during a working day, or it might be in an evening class. You know, I have seen people who've added skills, or just through interests, which have helped them onto perhaps a different career path than one that they would have thought of before. So I mean, if somebody wants to get some kind of career coaching, or, you know, a few, you know, words of wisdom from me, I can probably best explain back from the individual situation if we do it through email, Maxine.
Yes, I've got an email, so we can do that, absolutely. Again, if there's any questions or any kind of queries, maybe about something we've already discussed that you want clarification on, you can send me a private message now and we will email you. If you just let me know what the stipulation is that you'd like us to cover, and your email, I can arrange that as well with our panel. Yeah, I don't know, does anyone have any more questions? Anything else that they'd like to add to the chat? I'm well aware that it's now almost 8:25, so I don't know if people need to go. I know someone's going off to read their bedtime stories to their kids, so I appreciate that as well. Thank you for staying with us. Rachel's just put her Facebook handle, Trap Rain Financial, onto the chat as well. I will follow up with an email as well, so if for people that have already gone, we can make sure they get that too, but please do follow as well on there. I guess maybe we could, someone's asked, can we make appointments with the panelists out with this conversation? Absolutely, I assume, for some.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll put my, I think probably if I put my Twitter handle on, somebody can DM me direct.
Yeah, maybe if there's someone in particular that you want to speak to, you can absolutely go to them. Obviously, Rachel's put hers there, Trap Brain Financial. Again, I can follow this up on an email tomorrow with people's handles. It might save you adding it now if you want to think about how we do that. Or of course, you can message them privately as well on this chat just now, going from there. I don't know if we want to end the night on any kind of words of wisdom that you guys have been given in the past, either by someone that you've worked with or anything like that. It might be a nice way to end. And if anyone has any advice that they'd like to share in the chat for everyone else here, please do. You know, we've all kind of worked with different people in our lives and kind of come across lots of different people as we've gone on. And if there's any nuggets of gold there, let's share them for everyone.
I think for me, the best piece of advice I've ever been given is that if you don't ask, you don't get. So it doesn't matter what things are going on in your head, just ask. And if somebody says no, well, at least then you know the answer and you can try something else. But always ask. If you want to try something, or if you want to shadow someone, or if you've got questions, or if you've got thoughts about something, just ask.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I would probably follow on from that and say, you know, I think if you can't see a way forward, find it. You know, if there's not a path that's been trodden yet, then maybe it's you that's got to actually start that as well. You know you best. Always remember that. Once you work out what it is you want, I think the rest really will follow. And you know, it's back to that ask, but also I just don't take no for an answer. You know, I do believe there's a way, we just maybe need to find it. And someone said just today, actually, when we were chatting, you know, it's only impossible until it's done. So, you know, just don't give up at the first hurdle.
Yeah, absolutely as well. I think perseverance is something that, you know, you kind of don't really think about prior to it. If it doesn't work out, I know I've given up loads of things just for fear of failing as well. So I think it's just persevere, and yeah, you'll get there. My husband's just showing me his phone screen. His favorite is fail to prepare to fail, like the Scouts.
Yeah, I love that
one. Love that one. It rolls off the tongue. And that was a piece of advice, but for me, I think I've always just, you know, I've managed teams of 25 and I've managed teams of 2, and I think probably it's the management style, but I think it's just I've never commanded myself by pretending I know it all. Like I'm always quite open with like, well, I don't know how to do this. Like you do, you're going to be better at this than I do. And I think like, I think it'd be nice if everyone kind of worked in that way as well. And then you know people's limits and boundaries, because not everyone can do everything. And I think that's it. Like we're called, you know, superwoman or whatever. Like people, I kind of almost love and hate that attachment, because then it sets a barrier, almost a barrier for you to kind of, or put you on a pedestal. But yeah, I absolutely think like if you can't do something, there's no shame in like owning up to that. Like I think there's power in being honest with people you work with. So that would be my one thing, is just honesty is, yeah, always the best policy. Another one that rolls off the tongue. Yeah, I'll have a look at the chat. I don't know if anything else has come through. Oh, I have had a question here. Okay, Kim, let's see this. Sorry, my chat is doing something weird where it's not loading, but I know it's there. Oh, here we go. I think this is more of a personal question for me, but it's about breaking into kind of a freelance career. I don't know if anyone's got any advice on that as well. Breaking, I guess, into the freelance realm, whether you're coming from a full-time position before, or, you know, because it is a tricky kind of career to navigate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Rachel probably said it. I think, you know, who do you already know? What networks can you already leverage before you actually do it? I would say that's my biggest piece of advice. People that already know you, like you, trust you, go down that route. Yeah,
absolutely. Again, as I was been freelance for 3 years, obviously in tandem with HOOD, which is my full-time job, but part-time full-time. I have to kind of juggle other obligations as well, and it is difficult, but it's absolutely who you know, and harnessing those connections. I think if you don't have high-profile connections, they don't necessarily need to be, you know, the editor of whatever or the CEO of whatever. But I think just, you know, kind of seeing the value in all the connections you make, and also networking. I think someone mentioned that earlier. Like, I don't think I would have gotten where I have in my freelance career without networking. I think that's been the most invaluable thing. And I know it's difficult to do it now because there's not real-time events, but there's events like this where we can all kind of gather. So yeah, I guess it's just harnessing those connections, even if it's just a passing one that you've made. But yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else have anything to add? Any other advice?
I would also just add, don't underestimate. I mean, obviously, depending on the, you know, the area that you're working in, don't underestimate the importance of things like LinkedIn and just what your profile looks like there. You know, it is one of the things people do now is they check you out. If you have a site, they check you out on LinkedIn, they check you out on Instagram, Twitter, wherever. So do invest the time in just working out how those things work and making sure that you're showing up. And that means just a little bit of pre-work. We've talked a lot about it tonight. I think all of us at some point have talked about know your strengths, know your talents, know what's unique about you. What do you uniquely bring to the world? What do you do better than anyone else? And spend some time just working on how to articulate that. You know, obviously I'm from a brand building background. How do you articulate that in a really, really simple and powerful way? How would you talk about yourself if you were Olay or Pantene or whatever? Spend that time and get some help with that if you need it. Because people will check you out, and what you say and how you present yourself, it doesn't come naturally to many of us. Yeah, many of us are naturally quite humble. I go on LinkedIn sometimes and I look at people who I know that their experience is similar to mine or even less than mine, but my goodness, the way they describe themselves, they sound absolutely incredible. And I think, wow, and I have to step back and say, hold on a minute, I can do all that. So do invest that time in, you know, how you think about your strengths, think about yourself, and actually how do you articulate that in a way that when somebody checks you out, they're going to say, wow, I really need to connect with that person.
Yeah, great advice, Jill. Thank you. If there's no other questions, I think that's a wrap, everyone. Thank you so much for being part of this event, and yeah, that concludes our Women at Work virtual meeting.
And I was just going to quickly share an image. It's from, I thought it might be quite funny at the end. It's one of our imposter syndrome workshop, but if I'm just going to change it, I think we could maybe finish with that. It's one of my favourite images. So it's Superwoman saying, it's fine, I'll do everything. But she's knocked herself out.
Yeah, it feels very apt, doesn't it? I feel like I do that. It's fine, and especially being Aberdonian, fine is the word. Fine.
Yeah, I'm okay down here. I'm okay down here struggling.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Maxine.
No, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for joining us. I think we can all agree that it's been a really informative and enlightening evening. I'd like to take a minute to thank all of our panelists, Kirsty, Rachel, Catherine and Gill. It's been really invaluable. And thank you all for, as I say, taking the time out to join us this evening and for going over by half an hour. Again, I think it just shows what women can do when they support each other. I think really that's when amazing things can happen. Again, I'll follow up with an email if you all don't mind. I promise I won't spam your inbox after tomorrow. But if you do need to kind of get in touch with us, I'll pop our email into the chat as well at HOOD. It's hello@hoodmagazine.co.uk. It's not hard to remember, but I'll put it in. 1 second. You say this and then it doesn't happen seamlessly, but there you go. So yes, if you have any further questions that you'd like me to put to the panel, we can do so tomorrow and I can get back to you directly, or I'll put them on this email that I'm going to send around everyone. But again, thank you so much for joining us and have yourselves a lovely evening. I'm going to get some wine. I don't know about you. But yes, thank you. And thank you to our panelists.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
So I think we've lost Rachel and Catherine have gone as well. And then it was just, yeah, we just got a couple more. 2 6 ladies.
Did you want to have a little debrief, or are we just gonna?
Yeah, hold on 1 sec. I'm just going to clear.
It's stuck.
Yeah. Yes, I do want to do that. Yes, yeah.
I don't know if
I've kind of, yeah, I was going to say, I don't know. There we go.
Here we go.
I was like, I'm definitely removing her. You know that way you're like, remove from room.
Yeah, try.
I'm just going to stop the recording.